A billionaire's 5-year-old daughter had been deaf since birth, and the world's best doctors couldn't help her. Her father had spent millions searching for a cure with no success, watching his daughter live in silence. Then their humble maid did something with an old family remedy. That made the impossible happen. The sunrise streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse as billionaire technology entrepreneur Marcus Chen watched his 5-year-old daughter Emma playing silently with her dolls, her world perpetually quiet, despite every medical intervention money could buy. Emma had been born profoundly deaf, her hearing loss so complete that even the most advanced hearing aids and cochlear implants had been ruled ineffective by specialists at the world's top hospitals. Marcus had spent the past 5 years traveling to every renowned audiologist and experimental treatment center, spending millions on consultations that all ended the same way. Sympathetic doctors explaining that Emma's particular condition was untreatable with current medical technology, that she would live her entire life in silence. The grief of watching his daughter grow up unable to hear his voice, unable to enjoy music, unable to hear laughter or birdsong or any of the sounds that made life rich, had consumed Marcus in ways his wealth couldn't fix. His wife had left 2 years earlier, unable to cope with having a disabled child, leaving Marcus alone to raise Emma with the help of their household staff. He'd become obsessed with finding a cure, convinced that somewhere in the world existed a treatment he hadn't yet tried, a specialist he hadn't yet consulted, a miracle he could purchase if he just spent enough money and refused to accept defeat. Rosa Martinez had worked as the Chen family's housekeeper for 3 years, a 60-year-old woman from rural Mexico whose warm presence and genuine affection for Emma had made her more grandmother than employee. Rosa had raised 7 children of her own in poverty that made medical care a luxury, relying instead on traditional remedies passed down through generations of her family, healing knowledge that combined herbs, massage, and spiritual practices modern medicine often dismissed as superstition. She'd watched Marcus's desperate search for a cure with compassionate sadness, seeing a father whose love for his daughter was being channeled into futile efforts that money alone couldn't accomplish. One morning, Rosa approached Marcus with unusual nervousness, her English careful as she made a request she'd been building courage to voice for months. "Mr. Chen, I know you've tried everything for Emma. I know doctors say nothing works. But in my village in Mexico, we had healers who helped children with hearing problems. My grandmother was one. She taught me before she died. Would you let me try something with Emma? It might not work, but it won't hurt her." Marcus's initial reaction was dismissal, his scientific mind rejecting folk remedies as placebo at best, but something in Rosa's eyes, a certainty born of lived experience rather than medical theory, made him pause. "What would you do?" Marcus asked, his desperation making him open to possibilities he'd previously rejected. Rosa explained carefully about a traditional treatment combining herbal oils, specific massage techniques targeting pressure points around the ears and skull, and prayer rituals her grandmother had used successfully with deaf children in their village decades ago. To Marcus's Western medical understanding, it sounded like wishful thinking, but he'd exhausted every scientific option. What did he have to lose by letting Rosa try? If nothing else, Emma enjoyed Rosa's attention, and the massage might be soothing even if it accomplished nothing medical. Rosa began her treatments daily, spending an hour each morning with Emma in the quiet sanctuary of the child's bedroom. She applied warm herbal oil extracted from plants she'd carefully cultivated in pots on the service porch, oils whose names Marcus couldn't pronounce, but that filled the room with earthy, comforting scents. Her fingers worked with practiced precision around Emma's ears, along her skull, down her neck, following patterns Rosa's grandmother had taught her, pressure points traditional healers had mapped long before modern medicine existed. And while she worked, Rosa sang softly in Spanish. Old songs about healing and faith, her voice carrying love and intention, even though Emma couldn't hear the words. Marcus watched these sessions with skepticism that gradually softened into something like hope. Not because he believed in miracles, but because Emma clearly loved the attention and ritual. For the first time in years, his daughter seemed peaceful rather than frustrated by her silence, responding to Rosa's touch and presence in ways that suggested comfort, even without auditory input. 3 weeks into the treatment, something shifted. Emma was playing in the garden when Rosa dropped a metal tray in the kitchen. Emma turned her head toward the sound. Marcus noticed immediately, his heart lurching, but he dismissed it as coincidence, refusing to let hope destroy him with false promise. But Emma kept turning toward sounds. When Marcus clapped behind her head during dinner, testing, Emma looked back at him. When Rosa spoke her name from across the room, Emma responded. Marcus insisted on professional testing immediately, rushing Emma to the audiologist who'd previously declared her case hopeless. The results showed hearing function that hadn't existed 3 weeks earlier. Not perfect, but significant enough that Emma could now hear voices, music, environmental sounds. The audiologist couldn't explain it medically, suggesting perhaps Emma's original diagnosis had been wrong or her condition had spontaneously improved. But Marcus knew neither explanation made sense given years of consistent testing showing complete deafness. The miracle continued improving over following months. Emma's hearing strengthened to near normal levels. Her speech development, which had been severely delayed, began progressing rapidly as she finally could hear the words being spoken to her. The first time Emma said "Daddy" and clearly heard his response saying "I love you, sweetheart," Marcus broke down crying, overcome by joy he'd thought impossible. Rosa continued the treatments, maintaining them even as medical professionals dismissed them as coincidental to some unexplained natural healing, but Marcus knew better. Science couldn't always explain what love and ancient wisdom accomplished. Marcus established a research foundation studying traditional healing methods from indigenous cultures, partnering with medical researchers to investigate why and how these ancient practices sometimes produced results modern medicine couldn't. He funded clinical trials combining traditional and modern approaches, helping bridge the gap between generational wisdom and scientific validation. Rosa became a consultant for the foundation, her knowledge finally valued rather than dismissed, helping train practitioners in techniques her grandmother had taught in rural Mexican villages decades ago. But more important than scientific validation or research foundations was the simple fact that Emma could hear her father's voice, could listen to music, could experience the world of sound that had been closed to her since birth. And Marcus learned that sometimes miracles don't come from expensive specialists or cutting-edge technology, but from the loving hands and ancient knowledge of a grandmother from Mexico who refused to accept that silence was permanent when healing might still be possible through methods science didn't yet understand but couldn't disprove. Hope, Marcus realized, sometimes wore an unexpected face and spoke with an accent, carrying wisdom more valuable than any medical degree could provide.